Hi, everybody. Welcome to a new episode of Contemplative Knitting. My name is Julie. I live near Rochester, New York, right on Lake Ontario, which I'm sure you can see out the back. And this podcast is about my knitting journey as well as some of the things I learn about myself while I'm knitting. So today I thought I'd show you a couple of things and explain some of my adventures in knitting these items and tell you a little bit about what I've learned about myself. So what I'm wearing is the beautiful spring Hazel sweater by Regina Moismer, and it's made from Lang Donegal merino yarn. And I originally bought this yarn when I was living in the Netherlands, and I was going to a local yarn store, and they had decided to do a knit along, and they asked me if I wanted to participate because I was going to their knit nights, and I was super excited to do that. Well, little did I know it was a brioche sweater. Now, I had never done any brioche, much less a sweater. So I had bought the yarn and I went to a knit night, and this is right before COVID happened. And so these incredibly experienced, phenomenal knitters were trying to show me how to do brioche. And I made it through a row, and I thought, this is like trying to ski down the expert slope when I've never put on a pair of skis before. So I decided that the sweater pattern wasn't going to happen for me. And these other women were doing it in like 3 weeks. A whole brioche swing coat was what it was. It was a Vogue pattern. So I didn't want to waste the yarn, which I loved, and since I had two colors because it was a brioche thing, I decided to do this spring Hazel sweater, which is cool because it's kind of like a baseball shirt. So it looks kind of like I have this gray sweater over maybe a long sleeve t-shirt or something like that, but it's actually all knitted. It's a lot of stockinette stitch, and then I did the sleeves out of this beautiful blue, which has some flecks of kind of a purplish reddish yarn in it. And there's some fun details down the side. You can see there's kind of a seam, and there's some details down the side. But it was just a lot of knitting because it's a finger weight yarn. But it's a super nice sweater. It's casual. It's fun to wear. Keeps me warm, as you can see, in the wind and the snow. Although right now we're not having any snow. So I turned out I really loved this sweater. I love it's a perfect weight. It's kind of like a good extra layer in the house without feeling too super hot. So it's good on like a fall or a spring day as well, and it looks great with a pair of jeans. So that turned out okay. I still haven't done any brioche, but I'm getting close to it in the shawl. I did the Stephen West knit along, but I'm going very slowly with that. I'm more of a sweater making person, haven't done a lot of shawls, but I couldn't resist because I just spent the last 18 months going back and forth to the Netherlands, and I did get to visit Stephen West's shop in Amsterdam, which was just fabulous. I'm sure I'll tell you more about that as we proceed with more episodes. So my finished object, which has been quite an odyssey, is the Magnolia Bloom sweater by Camilla Vad. This is it. It has been a challenge not to knit. It's just very super squishy. But it uses 4 strands that you hold together to knit it. And it's done on like a size 10 US needle. And I love the bobbles, and I love the lacy pieces of it, and I've been looking at it. It's been in my queue for a long time. So I cast it on at the beginning of this year because, like Max the knitter from Les Garçons, it's a fast, quick knit, or at least I thought it was going to be fast. So I had bought the yarn back last winter from my local yarn shop in the Netherlands. I was living in Utrecht, and it was called Sticks and Cups. And the owner is from Iran, and her mom dyes yarn. So I had bought this kind of goldish yarn, and it has like some black in it, and it was hand dyed. And along with that, I gotten this Rauma alpaca lin mohair. So I bought 2 skeins of the dyed yarn that her mom had done and 4 skeins of this mohair. So I set about, I cast it on right around the first of the year, and I set about making it. The collar is, knit along ribbing, and then you sew it down. And then I made it all the way through the entire body, right up to the ribbing, and I ran out of the dyed yarn. So this was pretty horrifying, and I'm thinking I'm not quite sure what to do. So I went to my local yarn store, which is in Fairport, New York, and was kind of looking around at their dyed yarn, their indie dyed yarn, and nothing came even close. So I looked in their sale bin, and I found some yarn that was the perfect shade. I mean, it with 2 strands of this mohair and this yarn, it was perfect shade. Now the pattern calls it you have 2 strands of fingering and then 2 strands of mohair. So I did the rib doing that, and this is what I got. And I realized that the gauge was much bigger because I have this light, airy spun yarn. Even though it's fingering, it's still thicker because there's a lot of air in this yarn. And this is a beautiful 100% wool, merino, rosy green wool, and it's organic 100%. So what I decided to do, because I hadn't done the sleeves, so I did the ribbing, and I think the color match is pretty amazing. If you take a look at that, it's kind of like there's none of the black in it, but it looks pretty close. So now I've got the sleeve problem. So I didn't want a totally different gauge. So what I ended up doing was only using 1 strand of this and 2 strands of the mohair and knit the sleeve. So the biggest difference is there's none of the black speckled from the indie dyed yarn, but since both sleeves are the same, I didn't think it looked that bad. As a friend of mine says, if it becomes a design enhancement. So I just have different colored kind of sleeves. But the gold is so close that it kind of looks like maybe it's part of the design. This combination of yarn is just super soft and going to be perfect for wearing the next couple of days when we're getting into the negative wind chill factor up here, because once the wind blows, it may be 15 degrees out, but it feels like -8. So I'm excited about that. I finally got it done. I haven't blocked it and I haven't woven in the ends, as you can see, but I'm super excited about it. Yeah, I think it just kind of looks like that's how the design is. Well, at least, because I know I can't get any more of that indie dyed yarn, and I really wanted to finish this sweater, and it's always good to finish a sweater, and it's only like January 14th, and I've got a sweater done for 2022 already. Now, the other thing I decided to do, I made a spreadsheet of all of my works in progress, and I have a lot. I'm one of those knitters whose stash is dedicated to a project, so I don't have a lot of excess yarn except once I finish a project, and I'm going to put those in a bag. Not quite sure what I'm going to do with my excess skeins, but I can always donate them to a nonprofit organization in town called So Green, which takes excess yarn and sells it at like next to nothing prices, so that knitting and beautiful yarns are accessible to a lot more people. So that's the good news about that. Once I did my spreadsheet, there were some projects that were pretty close to completion. So I decided the second sweater I was going to do, also on size 10 needles, because that goes really quickly, is out of this book called Shades of Winter. I love this book. I've actually made this vest that's on the back. Again, I'll show it to you in a different podcast episode. But the one I'm working on is a cardigan. It's a cabled cardigan. And I have finished the back and one of the fronts. So this is the back of the cabled cardigan. I did it in kind of the gray like they have it because I just love it. But it's also very squishy, fast to knit. It's got this big horseshoe cable on it, some little cables. And so basically I have done that. I've done one of the fronts. Normally I knit the fronts together, but I just find it not as much fun anymore because the shaping is obviously the opposite on each side, and I just don't want to have to track two different kinds of shaping because I'm more liable to make a mistake. So I just knit one front, and now I'm knitting the second front. I'll knit the sleeves together because that way I know they're going to be the same size. But it's weird to knit a sweater in pieces because I've been knitting so many top down or circular, on circular needles. And so sewing that up, finishing that up is going to be something that I'm not used to doing as much anymore. So that's a work in progress. I did put on a new cast on for the year. I don't have any socks on the needles, and so I thought it would be fun to do a pair of socks. So I chose a pattern called Diamond Duality, and this is the pattern. And I'm using the Swanky sock yarn from Magpie Fibers in the color Empty Night and Tupelo Honey. And I cast on the smallest size because I have a size 7 foot. I didn't gauge swatch because, well, you know what it's like trying to swatch in the round. And I thought, well, I'm just going to start knitting the sock and then I'll check the gauge. So this is where I am with it. I love the pattern, but I think it's a little small. You know how you have that voice in your head that says, I think it's too small, I think it's too small, and it keeps at you, but you want to ignore it because you did this cast on that you've never done before that you struggled a little bit with, and then you spent like a couple hours on an airplane making this sock, and you're kind of like halfway through the pattern to the heel, and who wants to start over? But I know, I haven't measured it yet because there's part of me that doesn't want to know. I know it's too small. I'm already there. So I'm just gonna have to chalk up this to practice for it. But I do like the pattern and I like the sock, so I'm gonna sit down and I'm gonna measure it with my gauge ruler. I kind of did with a measuring tape, and you're supposed to have 9 stitches to the inch, and I think I have 10, but it's close. So my other thought is maybe I'll throw it on one of those long round needles and try it on my leg. So that's kind of next. That's what I'm going to be doing next. So in terms of what I've learned from these projects with the Magnolia sweater, I was really disappointed that I ran out of yarn, but on the upside, I ran out at a fairly good spot. It's a wonderful, soft, squishy sweater that I know will keep me warm. I'm not sure if the different kind of colored sleeves are going to bother me. I don't think they are. But there was nothing else I could do, and I wanted to use that yarn. So I think the lesson it's teaching me is to be more flexible and not to let expectations get in the way. I played yarn chicken not only with the yarn, the dyed yarn, but with the mohair. So I bought 4 skeins of this mohair, which is the Rauma Alpaca Lin, Lin, mustard color, from the store in the Netherlands. And I ran out of that. So then I went found it at Woolen Company online. I didn't care about the dye lot. I mean, it's, mixed in with this other yarn. I figured it wasn't going to be that bad. And it wasn't. So I bought 2 more skeins. So now, and then I played yarn chicken again, ran through the next 2 skeins. So I used up 6 skeins of the mohair, and I had this much left on the sleeve and then the ribbing. So I had to buy a 7th skein, which then I had to wind off part of it because I needed 2 strands. So with the 7th skein, and this is what I have left of the 7th skein, I made it. So 2 rounds of yarn chicken with this sweater. So it's been quite a journey, not something that I anticipated, but I tried to be flexible, roll with the punches, and yeah, I'll wear it the next time I do a podcast. I haven't blocked it yet. That's another thing. I just hate blocking anything with mohair. It looks like a dead cat, and it scares me. When I blocked my ranunculus sweater, I thought I had ruined it, but it blocked out fine. But it is a little bit of a scary process. So that's where I am. This is Julie, the Contemplative Knitter. Thanks for joining me, and hope to see you again soon. Bye.